So if you have any specific questions, inshallah, I can take them now. Otherwise, I can go through the list of questions that I have. No problem. After Salat al-Isha, do I have to pray 2 rak'ah sunnah if I am waiting for Taraweeh? So basically the sunnah prayers, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said they are 10. Right? He said there are 10 sunnah prayers that are done in the day and the night. Those are the 2 sunnah before Fajr, the 4 sunnah before Dhuhr, the 2 sunnah after Dhuhr, the 2 sunnah after Maghrib, and the 2 sunnah after Isha. And that is what this is talking about. These sunnah are different from the Taraweeh. These sunnah are different from the Taraweeh. And Taraweeh has different names depending on the time of the night that you pray them. So Taraweeh is the name that we've culturally given to the prayer that happens after Salat al-Isha in congregation. Then you have the Qiyam al-Layl or the Tahajjud, which are used interchangeably. But basically any prayer that is done from after Isha until Salat al-Fajr, this is considered witr, it's called Taraweeh, it's called Qiyam al-Layl, it's called Tahajjud. None of these are particularly different. Again, the only difference is at the time that you pray them. So these are different, it's a different prayer. These 2 sunnah are a different prayer. For my zakat, do I have to donate it to zakat fund or can I donate it to the iftar fund? No, zakat, it goes to a specific group of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specified 8 categories that it is to be given to. You cannot give it to a general sadaqah fund. Does an inhaler break the fast? There is a difference of opinion on an inhaler breaking the fast. Because it is something that enters the lungs, it is not considered muftir, and because it is not nutritional, it is permissible to do so. This is because the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed an individual to make wudu, and all he said was don't inhale too deeply because of fear that it would enter the stomach, right? That's the whole idea. That's the whole thing that actually essentially breaks the fast, is anything entering the stomach, and the inhaler enters the lungs, it does not enter the stomach. Some scholars say that there is a possibility that it enters the stomach, therefore there is a possibility it breaks the fast, and someone should not fast, or someone cannot use their inhaler while they're fasting, with many scholars saying that is okay. There is a valid difference of opinion on the issue, but Allahu A'lam, it's not that big a deal. I do not see any difference between Islamic finance for home buying or regular mortgage. Both charge interest, but in Islamic finance it is called profit. The rest of everything is exactly as the same as the bank. I did a lecture on this. I did a talk on this. If you go to our Facebook or to our YouTube page, you can look up the lecture. It's called Can Muslims Buy Homes, or Can Muslims Mortgage Homes? So again, you can go to our Facebook or our YouTube page and you can see the different scholarly opinions concerning how to mortgage specifically. Assalamu alaikum. In Surah Al-Saba, verse 13, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Sulaiman was blessed with a kingdom of resources, and tells that he had statues built for him. Tabteen, I understand statues could be made permissible at that time. Is it permissible to have statues? Over here, let me go into the tafsir of the verse, inshallah, and I will come back to it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, to explain it. Can you explain what Salafism is? Yes. So there are different schools, and there are different methodologies, and there are different understandings to Islam, and you have different institutions that teach different things. In Islam, you have different madahib to approach different types of belief. You have different madahib to approach different types of fiqh. You have different madahib to approach different types of grammar. So for example, for the madahib fiqhiyah, which is what most of us are familiar with, you have the Hanafis, you have the Malikis, you have the Shafis, you have the Hanbalis. In the Nahwi schools, you have the Kufan school and you have the Basran school. These things are very common. In polemic schools, so what you have now, when it comes to issues of belief, you have different schools of thought and how to deal with those beliefs. And basically, the most classical ones, you had 3. You had the Hanbalis, you had the Asharis, and you had the Maturidis. There are other schools of thought as well. So you have, for example, the Mu'tazila, who were another school, and then you also had the Falasifa, you had the philosophers. Basically, the difference between all of these schools is how you deal with Dhatullah Azza wa Jal. How do you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence? How do you deal with ghaybiyat? How do you deal with issues that have to do with the unseen? How do I research these things? At what point and how do I understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When He mentions certain things about Himself, how am I supposed to understand them? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all of these different characteristics, do those characteristics, are they representative of in and of themselves, or is it something that is meant to go back to one asl? And how they deal with them, this is where the difference essentially lies. Now, Salafism is something that, or this idea is something that is relatively new, that is based off of a lot of the different institutions that are promoting it. So you have a number of madaris today. For example, you have those in Morocco. They're an institution. They teach a certain type of brand. They're a certain type of school. There's a certain madhab aqadi that they teach. There's a madhab fiqhi that they teach. Many of them are linked to a particular tariqah. In Azhar, it's the same thing. In the Khalij, so if you're talking about the Gulf states, they do the same thing. Indo-Pak continent, it's very common to have the Madrasa Deoband and the Bareilly Madaris. You have the Ahl Hadith Madaris. Indonesia, you have two major schools. I think is Majlis Nadwat al-Ulama and another one. And the reason that I'm saying these things is basically you have certain institutions that teach these schools. And from the institutions that teach this brand or this type, you have based mainly out of the Gulf countries, particularly Saudi Arabia. And what happens is that you have this particular school who is teaching this particular understanding of Islam and this particular lens of Islam. And it's no different than any other institution teaching whatever brand of Islam that they're teaching. There are some unique things. Sure. No. Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry, but just a quick announcement. For those of you that aren't aware, we have an additional 12:30 prayer held at the church that's down the street. So we have the khutbah and the salah in the communal hall or in the community center hall down the street at the church. For those of you who don't know, the attendance there is much less. There's more parking. So if any of you have the opportunity to take advantage of it, or if any of you are in a rush, then I would highly suggest that you attend that one. Again, it's down the street. I think it's First Christian or First Baptist. I forgot what the name is. But it's down the street, and that one is, again, it's an additional prayer. It's at 12:30. So we have the 11 o'clock prayer here, we have the 12:15 prayer here, and we have the 1:30 prayer here, and we also have a 12:30 prayer over there. Again, we did this to help alleviate some of the traffic. So Salafism is something that, this is a relatively, again, a new concept. Everybody likes going back to the way of the Salaf, right? There's no Muslim, there's no madhab, there's no individual who will say, no, I don't like understanding how the Prophet ﷺ or how the companions understood or how the Tabi'in understood. This is what everybody claims. There's nobody who doesn't claim this. The only difference is that you have many practitioners of this lens, of this understanding. They rely on many modern day scholars, right? It's not something that they go back and there's a lot of classical understanding to it. There are a number of modern day scholars that these individuals rely on. It is not considered a classical madhabi school. It's not something that was found or it's something that comes along just like we know about the four madhab of fiqh, just like we know about the different madhab in aqidah. This is not something that was passed down in this way. It's an idea. It's something that is very what's the word? It's very romantic, right? It's very romantic. If I said to anyone, who doesn't want to follow the Quran and the Sunnah? Right? Is there anyone who doesn't want to follow the Quran and the Sunnah? Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when we say things like this, yes, it sounds good, but again, these things, it's a slogan. And because there is no Muslim, there's no Muslim. Even if those people are, quote unquote, people of innovation, nobody says we don't follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Even the Sunni opponents, like the Shia, or do they say we don't follow the Quran and the Sunnah? Of course, yeah, they claim the same thing. Where they get their sunnah from, that's going to be different. We take our sunnah, the Kutub Sitta, we have more books, in our encyclopedia of hadith is different. Where do they take theirs from? They take it from like Usul al-Kafi, and they have a few other books that they study from and that they take from. So this idea of taking from the Quran and the Sunnah upon a particular understanding, that's good, that's fine. There's nobody who claims otherwise. But to claim that this is something unique, to claim that this is something that only I understand, this is something that we need to introspect on. If I am doing a nusra of the haqq, if I really want the haqq, if I want the truth to triumph, is it important for me to call to an institution or is it important for me to call to the haqq? This is something we need to ask ourselves. And the only thing I feel that I as an individual, I can successfully do, the only thing I can protect is my jahl. The only thing I can protect is my ignorance. And how do I protect my ignorance? By stop asking questions. So what happens is that many times, many of us, if I graduate from Madrasa Deoband, if I graduate from Azhar, if I graduate from Qarawiyyin, if I graduate from any of these institutions, what's going to happen is I'm going to come and teach what the institution taught me, and I'm going to say what I am teaching is the best. What I'm teaching is right. And that's understandable, obviously. You know, even we have this today. If I graduate from, for example, George Mason, well, I come out of George Mason, I'm going to do whatever I can to defend the honor of George Mason. Why? Because I'm a product of it. There are very few people who will be brave enough to challenge the institution that they graduated from or that they learned from. And it's the same thing with this. Is there a, for example, an Azhari who says, no, Azhar is wrong? Is there a Deobandi who says Madrasa Deoband is wrong? Or is there a graduate from Nadwat Ulama in Indonesia who says, no, they're wrong? Nobody does. And there are few, and don't get me wrong, there are few who said no. Some of these fundamental teachings are mistaken, some of these fundamental teachings are wrong. But in general, a person who graduates from a particular institution will do his best to his institution. But I will tell you something. This is not Nusrat al-Haq. This is Ta'assub. This is exactly what Ta'assub is. That when I put my institution before I put the truth. And this is something that we all need to be careful of. And when do I know that I'm mistaken? When I'm not ready to question what my institution taught me. I have to be ready to question it. If Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam can say to Allah Azza wa Jal, Arini kayfa tuhil mauta, show me how you bring life to the dead, then who am I not to challenge my institution? Is my institution from Allah Azza wa Jal? Na'udhu billah. We have to be willing to challenge these norms, we have to be willing to challenge these institutions, we have to be willing to challenge them, not in the sense that we fight them, but in the sense that where did you get that from? Like, what if I come like this? What if I understand it like this? And understanding how to deal with each other and having differences of opinion. So whatever institute we graduate from, or wherever institute we come from, it's okay. Because at the end of the day, the person who graduates from that institution, he's going to be the one that's right. Regardless of what I have to say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله